Alright, you're locked here again. It's February 19th, 2017. I'm back again with another video on the mysterious language of the Hebrews. So looking at this Hebrew again. This lesson here is from the Faculty of Jewish Studies website, string too long to name, but it's biu.ac.il / all kinds of other things, Basic Jewish Studies Unit. And this article is entitled, Did the Patriarchs Speak Hebrew? Here, it's really, just seeing that people are thinking some of the things I've been thinking. But it still is a cloudy thing. That's why I continue to search. Now, in Genesis chapter 45, when Joseph is revealing himself to his brothers, remember that they didn't realize it was him at first. He was dressed differently. He looks at the Egyptians. Let's look at Genesis 45 and verse 12. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaketh with you. So there wasn't like a third party person at this point talking with them. So it seems here, according to what these people are saying as well, but it does make sense that the mouth or the speaking, which would then put your focus on the language that he was speaking, that was the way that they were able to identify him, because he is now speaking to them in a language that they can understand, because sight did not reveal to them who he was. So now he speaks to them in a language that they can understand, in the language of their house, right? That he came out of, because he knew the language. And he wasn't speaking in the other language that they would have been speaking in Egypt, or in a Canaanite language. But it seems he would have been speaking in Aramaic, as opposed to speaking a Hebrew, the Canaanite Hebrew language, because he was in Egypt. So by speaking in Aramaic then, as that's what I'm gathering here, that's happening in this text, he's saying, see, my mouth. In other words, understand what's going on here. I'm speaking to you with my own mouth in your language, Aramaic, which they said Abraham spoke Aramaic. So I'm telling you in your own tongue that I'm your brother. So you can believe now. Now if we look at the article here, I just pick up part way, probably in the third paragraph. Starting from the top of this page. I'll read the third and fourth paragraph. Remember, if you search for the article, Did the Patriarchs Speak Hebrew? From the Faculty of Jewish Studies, you should be able to come up on this article. It is possible that he said this to them simply as a means of pacifying them, for there was no proof that he was Joseph in the fact that someone in Egypt should speak in the holy tongue. In my opinion, the writer is saying here, Hebrew was a Canaanite language. And that's the part I was saying months ago. I started to think this, from last year. Just by different readings that I've done, it just started to just seem to me like this Hebrew they're telling us is the language of the Hebrews. It's from my readings, it's a Canaanite language. And remember, there are different kinds of these languages, right? If it's a Canaanite language, then why is it the language of the Hebrews originally? Now, they could have taken it on at some point, yeah, but why is it their original tongue? If it's a Canaanite language, right? Just because the Hebrews had been around in that era, and sometimes Hebrews would have been called Canaanites, it doesn't mean that they were the actual Canaanites, because obviously the Most High wouldn't have told them coming out of Egyptian bondage to go take out the Canaanites, right? And not to mix with them. So they were obviously different people than the Canaanites. And the Canaanites would then have their own languages, right? And one of those languages would have been the Hebrew. So if that is the case, why is it that Hebrew is the official or original language of the Hebrews? Certainly would not have been the language of a patriarch like Abraham, right? So, I mean, wouldn't Abraham have been speaking something different from what these Canaanites were speaking? Let's go on. For Abraham did not bring it from Ur of the Chaldees. Hebrew was a Canaanite language, for Abraham did not bring it from Ur of the Chaldees in Mesopotamia, and from Haran, for there they spoke Aramaic. And I've mentioned this in other videos before. So they're letting you know, yeah, he would have been speaking Aramaic, that's Abraham. And then they'll be meeting Hebrew as another language, as one of the dialects, and I guess you could say of Canaan, right? Of the Canaanites, as the incident of the pile of stones erected by Laban and Jacob proves in Genesis 31:47. And if you check that out, it's basically showing two different tongues coming in, right? And it was not a private language spoken by a single person, but a language of Canaan, and many people in Egypt knew it, for the countries were close together, particularly the ruler, for it is customary for kings and rulers to know several languages. Let's look up that Genesis 31 and verse 47. And Laban called it Jakar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galid. So it's the mound of stones called by Jacob in Hebrew Galid. So Laban is calling it something else, right, in his language, but Jacob in his other language here now is calling it something else, Galid, right, in Hebrew. So obviously, like when I first started this searching, I heard different people saying that that Hebrew and Aramaic are the same, and some are saying no, they're different languages. Some are saying they're the same, but it's just a script that's different for them both. So it's like there's a lot. I didn't know there was this much discrepancy over the whole language issue and difference between the Hebrew and the Aramaic. And for a while, I thought the Hebrew was Aramaic. But starting to look into it, I realized that there's just like a whole lot of stuff to uncover. You know, this thing we call the Bible is very peculiar. They tell us this is the Creator's instruction to us, and it was rolled out to the Hebrews, right? This thing now gets canonized, all these words from the Creator / Elohim of Israel gets canonized, and we put it now into what we call the Bible. And you cannot just sit down and just read this through like a children's book. It is so complicated that you need many years to understand this thing. Many years. And this is supposed to be communicating to us the simplicity of what the Creator wanted. It seemed very simple to me in Eden, in Genesis, don't eat from this tree. Very clear. And the Most High says he declares things clear. Very clear. It's simple. Adam knew. There was no argument there like, what do you mean? Like, sorry, what did you tell me yesterday? No, not that. You said something about tree, like what's... There's no problem, it seems. The man just understood. So when they were eating it, they knew exactly what they were doing because they understood it. But now we have this book we call the Bible, and understanding is like something that seems like you are trying to build some, I don't know, some kind of spaceship to try to burst through the dome. But I would just imagine that the Bible should be something that would just come to you with understanding, just simple enough to understand. Does not mean that it cannot have mysteries to it and so on, because hey, you're dealing with the Creator and so on. There must be all kinds of mysteries, but shouldn't it be filled with way more simplicity and ease of understanding than it is? Which is why I suspect that something about the language that we've been told is the language of the Hebrews and of the Bible, and the way certain things are worded throughout the Bible is very, these things are somewhat suspect of people doing things over time to present it to us in a way where it is not as easy to understand. No wonder the book of Proverbs spends so many verses trying to tell you about wisdom and searching and seeking understanding and so on. As if the Most High knew that you're going to have to go through some time of deep seeking and searching and studying and praying and trying to find truth if you want to really find Him. Because He knew these things would happen where things would get complicated along the way. But as for the simplicity in the Garden of Eden, it's like in the end times things are going to seem to get easier, because when you look at this very common verse here in Jeremiah 31, where the Most High is going to put the renew the covenant and put the stuff in their hearts, it says, "This is a covenant that I make with them, and I'll put my law," to cutting out some of the verses in verse 33, some of the words in verse 33, "I'll put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and I'll be their power, and they will be my people." And verse 34, "And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Most High, for they shall all know me, from the least of them." That's telling me right there that there is a simplicity that will return. That means at the start there was simplicity with the Most High's commandments, and there is a simplicity that will come at the end, so we can understand the Most High. That means what's going on in the middle, which would include right now, has a lot of confusion added into the whole thing. Because, I mean, you get a thick manual with your car, even though you already know how to drive cars. You'll get some thick kind of manual for different devices that you already know how to use. But the most important thing on the earth, which is the instructions of the Creator, is so complicated for us that, let's say some bad shit happen, like some great war comes and a lot of explosions and whatever, and everybody in a certain land, or most people in a certain land, die. And let's say all the people who know the Bible and know the Hebrew, or even Aramaic, if you want to put that in there, die off, like all the pastors, all the priests, all the Hebrew teachers, and so on. And you just get a handful of people left who never cared much about the Bible, but this whole thing scares them. They can't find a way to make it out of the country to get to another country that this war and disaster didn't happen, to pick up life. So they're stuck in that land and going through all kinds of ruins, rummaging, looking for food to eat, things to survive with, and so on. And they find books, Bibles. And to understand it, they can't just pick it up and understand it easily by reading it to connect with the Creator again. Why? Because it's so difficult to understand. Doesn't that just strike you as being a little bit odd? When I see the Most High talking to the prophets and people in the Bible, He seems so straightforward a lot of times. I'm not talking now about the prophecies, because some of them make you... actually, some of the prophecies are more difficult to understand without some extra searching, only because, for example, the names of certain nations and countries and lands have been changed. So you can't really blame that part on, the taking of more time to understand certain prophecies about end times. It's just people change names over the course of time for nations, right? But when he's talking to people, like when he was talking to Jonah, because Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh, or when he's talking to, I don't know, anybody, it's like by the time he's through, the person understands. So obviously whatever language they were talking in, whether it's Hebrew or Aramaic or some other language that was the language of the Hebrews, they understood very well what was going on. And none of them were like, man, I went through all that for like half an hour with the Most High and I still don't even know a lick of what He was trying to say to me. They understood. So the Creator's instructions are clear. And here we are battling, before we can battle over understanding of scripture, we're trying to battle over just simply what the language was. And that doesn't strike you as being kind of odd? So now if I go and read the next paragraph of this now. Okay, so the fourth paragraph. For his assertion that Hebrew is a Canaanite language, Ramban makes reference to Isaiah, who does thus refer to Hebrew. On that day there will be 5 cities in the land of Egypt that speak the language of Canaan and swear by the Most High of Hosts, that's Isaiah 19:18, that the original language of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was Aramaic, is proved to Ramban's mind by virtue of the fact that Laban gave the name Yagar Sahudata to what Jacob called Galed in Genesis 31:47 I just read earlier. The former had remained in Mesopotamia and continued to speak Aramaic, that would be Laban, which Ramban thinks was spoken in Ur and in Haran. So you're dealing with Abraham there speaking the same Aramaic, while Jacob, who had grown up in Canaan, like a more Egyptian territory, had learned the local language, which should have been a Canaanite tongue, Hebrew. So obviously, when someone says to me, Hebrew and Aramaic are the same, it takes some more thinking, right? I mean, it's really a lot of things to go through here, because, well, I'll save that for later, although I mentioned that in another video, but this idea that the language of Canaan was the language spoken in the land of Canaan, as opposed to the Aramaic of Mesopotamia, appears earlier in Ramban's commentary. Okay, I don't want to read any more of this. But Abraham, at least we're told, he knew the Aramaic. If Hebrew is a Canaanite language, then am I to understand that when the Hebrews came out of Egypt and they were told to destroy the Canaanites, take over their land, that they were speaking a different tongue from the Canaanites who were they invading? But hold up now, because if they're going to speak with even Rahab, there would be some understanding of each other. And keep in mind as well that Jonah went to Nineveh and he had to speak to them and give them a very important message of judgment, straighten up, get your act together. So he would have been able to communicate with them and they would understand him. So what language was Jonah speaking? Was he speaking Hebrew? Was he speaking Aramaic at that time? And what language were they speaking in Nineveh? I'm going to cover that in another video. But if I look here from Nineveh Online, a preservation and advancement of the Aramaic language in the internet age from Nineveh.com. Let's see, there was a line or two I wanted from this. Where is that again? Okay, they say here the Aramaic language has survived among our people through the rise and fall of empires, plagues, Hellenization, Arabization, Turkification, and Kurdification. It stands today as one of the most significant traits that distinguish us from our neighbors, but that has not always been the case. Okay, yeah, this is probably what I wanted. Although the ancient Assyrians are credited with the spread and standardization of the Aramaic language throughout the Near East, many different peoples have used Aramaic during various epochs. Thanks to our ancestors, Aramaic was the very first lingua franca. It has also served as a basis for almost every Western-based alphabet in existence. Read that part again. The Aramaic has served as a basis for almost every Western-based alphabet in existence, from Greek to English and from Hebrew to Arabic, as well as the various Asian scripts used in India and Mongolia. And finally, Aramaic was the language of Jesus Christ and his apostles and the language in which the message of Christianity was first preached. This makes the Aramaic language an important topic of study for all Christians. Western Christianity has historically ignored this important field of study, but now thankfully that's all going to change. I guess they're trying to preserve the Aramaic, right? But they're telling you that the Aramaic is the basis for all these, a lot of these Western-based alphabets, right? Now, and they mention even from Greek to English. Now, there's this guy that apparently a long time ago in the book is very hard to find these days. I don't remember the guy's name now, but apparently had written a book a long time ago that says that the language of the Hebrews was actually Greek, and apparently he set out to prove it. You can find a video on YouTube, look it up, I don't remember what it's called, but look up Greek was the language of the Hebrews or something like that, right? Or the language of Israel, ancient Israel, or something like that, and see if you find it. So, I mean, talk about flipping something around, right? He says it was Greek. I mean, now I don't know what to do with that yet because I didn't look into it much, but I'm aware of that, right? I mean, if that is the case, because I mean, I told you I'm rereading the Bible, so I consider every part of me damn thing. I'm not telling you I believe it was Greek. I believe it was Greek, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I'm considering everything. I'm starting over as a baby. Even things that I took for granted, I'm starting over as a baby. Now, I still use the things I already have learned over the years, even from Christianity, as some sort of a basis for my knowledge, because I got to have something to stand on to start with and to measure things alongside with and so on, right? But I'm considering everything as I read. Now, and learning the Bible all over again now, right? So now, if it was Greek, that was the language of the Hebrews, that means all of this stuff about Aramaic and Hebrew in the Bible and places like 2 Kings 17, verse 26 and so on, all that stuff would more be just what? Amounting to just a gimmick and trickery and so on, or what? Tampering? Like, look at 2 Kings 18:26. Then said Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, and Joah unto Rabshakeh, Speak, I pray thee, to thy servants in the Syrian language. So he's dealing with Aramaic, for we understand it. So in Assyria, they're saying, speak to us in Aramaic. Speak to us in Abraham's language, basically saying. So you get some, for we understand it, and don't speak with us in Hebrew, which is the Jews' language. That's what he's saying. So you get, and outside of Israel, you get this Babylonian, or this Assyrian, telling the people, the chosen people of the Most High, who you would think have the language, the proper set apart language, telling them to speak with them in Abraham's language. You're speaking basically in a Canaanite tongue, Hebrew. Talk to us in Abraham, your forefather's language. That's what he's basically saying to them. So what's that all about? If we are to expect that it is really correct that Greek is the actual language and history has been flipped on us. Listen, I don't want to throw anyone off who's listening to me, right? Do your own research, and a lot of you are more in touch with camps and so on, or you're more in touch with people who you can talk with and get some better answers to feel things out and help you along the way. I'm in a place where there's nobody right beside me, so really, now I do talk to people still, but it's like for a quick answer and a quick stuff, they're not always available, right? Because it's, but I'm not trying to throw anyone off. I'm just simply asking a lot of questions about all kinds of things that I read in the Bible now. I just want you to do the same. If you can help me with anything, say, hey, I know someone you can talk to, whatever, or know this website or this book, you can pass that information on and so on. But at least take what I'm saying as some serious consideration, right? Because we have been in captivity and kicked out of our land for a long time, over 2,500 years or so. And a lot of deception has happened. Not only deception, but a lot of time has been spent with us having been scattered, just simply learning other people's cultures and languages. So, when the Most High said we should seek and search and find our way back to Zion, this is a part of it. It's the searching and the seeking, right? Not everybody's going to seek in the same kind of way to have us return to Zion in our hearts and then eventually one day physically. Some of us are going to focus on different things. Some of us will focus on the language, restoring the language. Others of us are going to focus on understanding the holy days more and are big on that. Others of us are going to be more well versed in history because they study history to prove who we are and so on, and prove our identity more. So different ones of us focus on different things, right? For some reason, it just seems that this language thing has just hooked me, right? So that's just what I'm dealing with these days. But they're saying Greek was the language, this particular guy. And what I find kind of odd is that it just seemed to have slipped out of history. And nobody really wants to talk about it. But he's giving some very striking things because the person read from the book about 3 chapters of it, and it actually sounds interesting. So why is it that you don't hear people talking about that too tough? Sometimes you wonder why. Why the silence? But then I'm told also that the Greek alphabet was made from the Hebrew alphabet. So then the Greek would have come after the Hebrew. So what do you do with all that information, right? Then you get other people who say the language was some Ethiopic, as I've mentioned before, like Ge'ez. So what does that do to the Aramaic of Abraham then? And now you have other people who say the language was Tamil, and that some or a lot of the words in Hebrew and even in Aramaic came out of Tamil, and that even Jesus actually spoke Tamil on the cross. We were told after they gave us Hebrew. You see, that's why I'm suspect about this modern Hebrew. We were told all along Hebrew. The Israelites spoke Hebrew. And as long as everybody accepted that all along, no big deal. But when people start to question it, all of a sudden now you hear, well, it's Aramaic. And they're telling you Jesus was speaking Hebrew on the cross. And one time they said, well, we don't know what language he was speaking. What did he say? Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. They don't know. Then they said it's Hebrew. That's not satisfying because after a while people get bored of the same religious rhetoric. Now people start feeling uneasy, feeling like something's wrong in their spirit, so they start searching. Then you hear, well, it's actually Aramaic he was speaking on the cross. Well, why in the hell didn't you tell us that 100 years ago? Only when people begin to push, now you want to tell us that it was Aramaic? Can you understand the reason why I'm rereading the Bible? Because I'm tired of just taking... I better calm down because it's like, anyway, I'm just tired of taking all these gimmick answers. I just want to know for myself. That's all I'm saying, right? And to help someone else along the way. Now, in the end, if I don't even figure out what the language was, in the end, at least, after all the numbers of videos that I've done and have left on this topic of the language, I would have still gained a lot of knowledge because, a lot of knowledge, and I would have grown a lot just by studying this topic of the language, trying to find the language. And those who listen to me would be helped as well in the same way because they would have learned a lot of other things. Because I'm realizing by looking at this stuff, I've had to read a lot of different things that I did not want to read, was not interested, but I have to. Like different things about geography, ancient lands, different people groups that I've met along the way in my studies and reading these things. A lot of stuff I've learned that I have a ton load of videos left to make eventually with all this stuff I've learned, but can't because I just don't want to get distracted. It's just like I have to read all this extra stuff just to find out sometimes one little thing. That's how studying goes, I guess. So in the end, it's not a waste. I'm still learning stuff, right? And then you might start to think as well that if the Most High said he's going to restore the language in the end, maybe we won't actually find it out now. But we'll just go on in general to think it was Hebrew or Aramaic and battle between those two. But this guy, I can't remember his name now, says Tamil. Well, a lot of people say it, that Tamil was the actual language. And some say that was a language spoken at the Tower of Babel. But then you get other people pushing very nice arguments that Aramaic was the tongue. And actually, maybe the next video after this, I'll read some interesting stuff I found out about Aramaic. which really stands up for Aramaic, saying that it would have been the language of Assyria. Now, if that's the case, then is that what Jonah was speaking Aramaic and not actually Hebrew? And if that's all the case as well, then Nimrod going into Assyrian territories and setting up all these cities, Nineveh and so on, was Nimrod speaking Aramaic? A lot of stuff. Anyway, I'll cut it right there. Thanks for listening, and I hope you really are looking into this stuff. Even if you don't want to be studious on this topic right now, you should at least read at least one page on it from somewhere, whether it's a book you order or find at the library or on the website. Read from one page, one author, or one page on a website, something like that. Just as a way to make sure you yourself are not giving every person you listen to your belief for free. Oh, I believe him just because he's singing, and just because I like 2 of his other videos, I will just believe him from what he's saying. No, look into it even a little bit. Read even half a page so that you are doing yourself a little bit of credit in terms of not just being gullible towards everything that people give to you, right? Thanks for listening.